All right, let's talk about positive and negative space. So this is the handout that you can download on D2O. And just to kind of go through it, we are going to be creating 4 different simple compositions. And each one of these compositions, we're going to play with just a few shapes. So I recommend like 2 to 3 simple shapes, but it can vary depending on what your ideas are. I'm not going to count shapes. I also, as I said in the lecture, provided a diagram of Wucius Wong's interactions of shapes because I think this can be helpful. So if you find yourself struggling with this, play with these arrangements and see if that helps. What we are going to try to do with this assignment is create positive and negative reversal. And some tips in making that work. First of all, you want to make sure that the qualities of positive and negative space are fairly equal in terms of what's touching the border. If you imagine like a black circle floating in like a white piece of paper, the fact that in the center of that, the white is touching all the borders, and that is going to very clearly identify the black circle as the positive space. Now, if you have like 2 black circles and they're on each side, you may or may not know what's positive and negative because you're going to see like 2 half circles, and then you're also going to kind of see an hourglass shape, and that'll create the positive and negative reversal. So think about how much is touching the edges of the picture plane. So that's one tip. And I find that having too many things going on is also something to avoid. So again, limiting the number of shapes, playing with perhaps scale, larger scales, not being afraid to crop the shapes. And the reason I'm having you do 4 is that, and you'll see this in this class, I often will have you do multiples of things. And the reason is usually you start to get better as you go along. And so your first idea might work, but your second and third and your fourth might be even better. And I think that just kind of playing with it once is helpful, but to really solidify an idea, I really think doing it more than a couple times is helpful. So we're going to be using black and white shapes, and I want us to put it on a color presentation board. Now, in this project, we can go high-tech, low-tech. You can do this cutting and pasting. So if you do that, like using black construction paper and white Bristol, and then like a color presentation board in the back. You can also do this digitally and complete it digitally and then make sure you have a color background. The reason we want a color background is because we don't want to force the identity of what's the negative space. So for example, if I have white and black designs on a black presentation board, then the white is automatically going to read as positive space. So if I have black and white designs on a red presentation board, I have no idea. I don't have any preconceived ideas as to which is positive or negative. So that's the reason we're using it like that. Think about the craftsmanship in terms of whatever way you complete the project. And I'll show you some examples. So I do have the media here, and it doesn't necessarily include digital. If we were meeting in the class, I would make us work on this in class, and it would be kind of playing with some of those hand skills. But since this is remote, you have the option of doing it either way. And then I have the rubric. So in all of the projects, you're going to see these same categories of process and concept, creativity, composition, craftsmanship, and professionalism. And some of these things are going to be specific to the project, and some of them are going to be universal, like professionalism is like, did you follow the instructions? Did you complete the assignment? And things like that. So just keeping that in mind, like under composition, you can see the positive, negative reversal. This is basically asking, does it flip? Does it kind of create that inverse of the positive and negative space? So say it's a really great design, but it doesn't flip, you're not going to get points for that section. So that's just kind of how that works. Should be pretty straightforward. Now, I'm going to show you some examples. I often show examples of the projects, but keep in mind that I show things that work and don't work because I think that can be really helpful. So don't assume just because it's an example, it's perfect. All right, now looking at I'll start at the top left. All of these flip very well. but some of them could be more interesting than others. So I think probably the most interesting thing on here is the top right, this one here, because we can see kind of these arrows and then we can see these black shapes. The problem with the top left and the lower right is no matter what, we see this square and we see this like diamond square. When you start flip-flopping a singular shape like that, it becomes more of a pattern than positive negative reversal. Is your eye flip-flopping back and forth? Yes or no? Honestly, with this one, it would have worked better if this was the whole composition right here, because I would have looked at these triangles versus these triangles. But now I'm looking at this square, and then I just see the square and this. So you kind of see the distinction, and this works really well because we see the black triangles in the center, or diamonds in the center, and then the white triangles on this side. It's just, again, is that the most interesting composition you've ever seen? And you could kind of have more variety of shape types. Now, the one on the top, the red one in the middle on the top, this is probably the strongest, and all four compositions are very strong. And they're interesting, they're different. They are playing with kind of the star and arrow motif, but I do think they do a lot of different things. So one thing I want to identify, and we'll see a couple of examples of this, is it is very challenging to create an identifiable object. And the only way that it will work is if you have an equally identifiable object in the opposite space. So we can see the white star here, but we can also see the black arrows in the top left one. If the star wasn't a star, we would only see the arrows. And if the arrows weren't arrows, we would only see the star. So if you're trying to put something recognizable in the negative space, you need something equally recognizable. That's what makes this such a challenging thing. So I am not requiring that you make it recognizable. I'm just recommending that it flips. And it can flip very easily with very basic shake arrangements. If you look at the one right next to that in the red on the top right, very simple. I can either see the four black corners, or I kind of see like this white thing that has like four corners in the center of it. So it kind of reminds me of like a candy shape or something. So it goes back and forth, but it's not recognizable. So it doesn't matter. So that example is wonderful. All of those are great. Now, looking at the next one on the top, this one is an example. So this student, when I said, it's harder to do things with objects, they were like, challenge accepted. And these three are not fabulous. They kind of flip, but they're weird. And they're trying to play with these shape faces, and they're interesting, but I don't know how well they all work. However, the bats and the castle, brilliant. This is probably one of the strongest designs that's recognizable that I've ever received as a single design. Now, the whole project is not super strong, but it's so perfect with these little bats. I can see those. I can see the castle and see how that flip-flops. That's what we're going for. So it doesn't have to be recognizable, but that's a great example of one. If we go down to this red one, again, these all flip, but especially with the circle one down here, the lower left, that could be more interesting. Like they could have moved, they didn't have to all be centered. Like you could move this over to the side, that would have been more interesting. The intestine one actually is pretty interesting here because that flips really well, but they all flip, so that's good. Now the center green one on the bottom, again, we start to get these things like patterns. I would say the top and the bottom really read more like patterns. I am just going to see those box X shapes no matter which way I focus. So it doesn't really invert. And then this design here on the left, that doesn't work at all in terms of inversion. It's a really cool design, but it doesn't flip. But this kind of wine, like the sideways wine glasses and then these kind of like Ys that are sideways, that works because I can see the black and then I can see the white. So that goes back and forth, back and forth. So that works. So in this project, only one of them actually works. Even though they're all strong designs, they don't invert. So make sure that you have that flip-flopping that happens. And then here on the green one on the lower left, all of those work very well. This is a very solid project, and there's some nice variety in the different compositions. So those are just a few examples, hopefully to help you get a better idea of how to manage the project. And I recommend that you start by sketching out some basic shapes. You can also just kind of cut out some shapes if you're doing cut and paste and like put them on and physically move them around. So both of those are great ways to start with this. But getting to the point where you're starting to see the relationships, I also recommend that you don't do this all in one sitting. And I'm just going to warn you that, you know, when we are physically flip-flopping from positive to negative space, notice the feeling in your eyes. Your eyes are actually refocusing. You will give yourself a headache if you do it too long in one sitting. So just remember, I warned you. So reach out if you have any questions, but that is project 1.